When we talk about ailing schools in Arizona, I think what we have to look at is why are they ailing? And I would argue that the main reason is that the Arizona legislature has dramatically defunded our schools. Since 2008, Arizona led the nation in the depth of cuts to education in Arizona. At 21.8%, we cut more than any other state in the country, and we were already one of the poorest funded education systems in the country. This is hurting our kids, and it's causing a lot of problems for our communities. In our community in Tucson, we've had to close 20 schools in our city's largest school district. We've lost a number of very qualified teachers. Class sizes have gone through the roof. We've lost a number of counselors, librarians, and I have to tell you as a parent, there are other parents out there who are seriously considering or have already left the state of Arizona because of the dramatic budget cuts that have occurred in Arizona. Now, some people will say, well, it was just the recession. That's what you'll hear from politicians. We didn't have a choice. They did have other choices, but they chose to cut schools. Now the budget is recovering. There is money in the budget. And so are they reinvesting in our schools to undo the damage that's been done? Absolutely not. Last year, the governor had a very modest budget request for education, and only $89 million was restored. Remember, $1 billion has been cut since 2008. This year, the governor came forward again with a very modest budget request, and once again, it looks like the schools will be getting close to only $80 million. There is no intent on the part of the state legislature to restore what was lost to schools. They do not make this a priority, and it's one of the reasons why we moved forward with Proposition 204, because we don't think that we can trust the legislature to adequately fund education in Arizona. Now, this hurts school children, but it also hurts the state's economy, and you're starting to hear more and more from different leaders that try and recruit businesses to the state of Arizona that they are having a very difficult time doing that because businesses want to come to a place where they can be assured they have an educated workforce. We are basically assuring them that they aren't going to have that in the state of Arizona. We've had companies come and try and set up shop in Arizona and have to turn around and leave because they cannot find qualified employees to work there. So it's an issue that affects not only the welfare of our children, but it also affects the state's economy. Something else about the governor's budget for this year is that not only is there a de minimis amount that will probably go through for education funding, but she's actually taking a debt off of the books. So there's $260 million that's owed to schools. And it is clear now that the governor is going to eliminate that debt. So in essence, we're going to be cut one more time. Now, there was a recent court ruling that could have restored some funding for schools. The courts ruled that the legislature should have been funding inflation since 2010, which is when they stopped funding inflation. And the courts have ordered them to do so. Did they do so? No. They're appealing the court ruling. So there is a certain, I'll just say, hostility toward funding public education in Arizona. The money is there. They're refusing to dedicate it to a place where it really will make a difference, will help the economy, and this is very disturbing to us.
It's a terrible situation, it really is. It inflames me as a teacher because I remember when I was in Portland teaching around the 1980s, our money started to go down. We started getting less and less, and all of a sudden I saw my class sizes going up. And I know I was teaching high school now. I was teaching kids who were young adults, not teaching elementary school kids. And I noticed 20 was a great number in class. 25, I could focus on every one of my students, and I love to focus on every one of them and make all of them an individual, not just a big group of people who I'm lecturing to. When I got up in 26, 27, 30, 35, I could no longer see everybody, every student, think about every student, and I know I slighted some of them, not on purpose, but I would actually find myself saying, oh, I'm so glad that Julie and Bill don't need any special attention so I can focus on other people. Well, Julie and Bill did need attention. I just didn't have the room and the time to do it, and that's scandalous. Now, I've looked at the Arizona Constitution, and we've got a Constitution that really is a progressive Constitution, and it says we're supposed to spend as much as we possibly can on education. I've got an old travel book about Arizona, and in the 40s they talk about the almost ridiculous amount that Arizonans lavish on their children. Then I started looking at the numbers starting in 1970. Then the numbers in real dollars started to go down, and they took a real nosedive in the last 4 or 5 years. You simply can't do that. You can't do that for the future of the state. You can't do that for our children who are supposed to love, who are supposed to try to give the best possible future for. It's absurd. It doesn't make any sense.
No, and I think what's happening too, you know, we always say that the thing that really makes a difference in a child's education is a high quality teacher. I think everyone agrees with that. But what I see happening in Arizona is teachers are leaving the profession. They're retiring if they can. They're moving out of state. They're switching professions. And so all of these individuals that we have invested time and development in, they're not able to stay in a profession that many of them love. I was just at a luncheon recently, and teachers who were receiving awards talking about how this is their calling, this is their passion. These are the people that we want in front of our children and shaping the future of our country. But in Arizona, we are making it incredibly impossible for them to raise a family, to have any sort of, you know, job, know whether their job is going to be there from, you know, this year to next year. And we're layering on reform after reform after reform. So not only have we had devastating cuts over the past 5 years, we also have been layering on new reforms and not funding them. So we're asking teachers to do more with much, much less. And as we all know, who buys supplies for teachers' classrooms? Teachers buy those supplies. And the laundry list of what they're asking people to bring in has just become, I mean, longer and longer and longer. And, you know, our schools are not charities. We shouldn't be treating them that way. Our teachers are professionals. We should be treating them that way. But Arizona is doing the exact opposite.
Of all the people I've known, teachers are about the least mercenary people I've ever seen. Teachers, as you say, will go into their checkbooks, which is, you know, out of their salaries that are fairly meager, spend $500, $1,000, $2,000 on their students because they don't want to give them anything less than the best education possible. As a teacher, I can tell you that there's some days I walked out of class and felt despondent because things didn't go the way I wanted. But there were other days I thought, you don't even have to pay me for today. Today went so well, I got all the payment I needed from the eyes of my students, from the hands up, from that aha moment that I got. This is what teachers thrive on. If you give them poor salaries, they're going to leave when they can't raise their families. If you give teachers adequate salaries, you're going to do better. If you give them decent, good salaries, as they do in much of the world where we talk about how much better their education is, what happens after that is you start getting higher level teachers who come from the top of the college graduating classes rather than the middle, and everything comes out better. But you've got to do both. You've got to have enough funding for teacher salaries. You have to have enough funding for supplies, for textbooks, for decent class sizes. Otherwise, you're lost. Otherwise, it simply isn't going to work.